War, other people played a role. The Continentals fought under George Washington against the British. The Continentals were very unorganized and didn't know their commands. And the Continental commanders didn't know their commands either. It was not until the French came to help the Americans that they got organized. But the Continentals weren't the only army who fought the British. The Minutemen and the American militia also played a role. The Minutemen would defend towns at a minute's notice. They would fight with rocks, guns, pitchforks, anything that they could get their hands on. The militia used the same weapons but would fight the British directly instead of defending towns. The militia would hide behind rocks and surprise attack the British. This was essentially called guerrilla warfare, which they learned from the Indians. The war lasted from 1775 to 1783.
The Revolutionary War in America led to the birth of a new nation, the United States. The war, which is also called the American Revolution, was fought between Great Britain and its 13 colonies that lay along the Atlantic Ocean in North America. The war began on April 19, 1775, when British soldiers and American patriots clashed at Lexington, Massachusetts, and at nearby Concord. The war lasted 8 years. Tension had been building between Great Britain and American colonies for more than 10 years before the war began. Starting in the mid-1760s, the British government passed a series of laws to increase its control over the colonies. Americans had grown used to a large measure of self-government. They strongly resisted the new laws, especially tax laws. A fierce debate developed over the British Parliament's right to tax the colonies without their constant taxation, without representation, was unacceptable to Americans. The American colonies were unprepared for war. They lacked a central government, an army, and a navy. Delegates from the colonies formed the Continental Congress, which took on the duties of a national government. It appointed George Washington, a wealthy Virginia landowner and former military officer, commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. On July 4, 1776, the Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, in which the colonies declared their freedom from British rule. In 1777, the Americans won an important victory at Saratoga, New York. The victory convinced France that the Americans could win a war. France provided the Americans with the money and military equipment they badly needed to fight the war. In October 1781, British surrendered to Washington at Yorktown, Virginia. That defeat led the British government to begin peace talks with the Americans. The Treaty of Paris formally ended the war in 1783. Our new nation was born.